welcome to the Layman's Law School, where sometimes more, down-to-earth lawyers discuss the legal issues of the day and try to break it down to a little bit more common sense where everybody can understand it. Shawn, good to have you as always, my friend.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Been off for a little bit. New babies and all.
Yeah, well, both of them. I mean, we're a little bit off our A game. We'll
Correct.
Just put that up front. We both have new children that mine's not sleeping well. So we're going to try to do the best we can. It'll probably be a little bit lighter episode today.
I hope so.
Because, we
don't have the boss. We don't have the boss driving us.
So the inmates are out of the cages.
Exactly.
So before we start, as always,
It's Friday.
Another good week.
Thank you.
See about this. Oh, this is the one thing that I really hated that Chace was going to miss this one because he
Just
didn't
to see his face.
Yeah, I mean, some of my weekly enjoyment is to watch him.
I think it's delicious.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing. It's just it's a fine beverage. I mean, essentially, but
Defined or refined?
both. So Chace cannot be here today. He'll be back very soon. But he did send us something.
Of course he did.
Of course he did. And it's, of course, in a, what do you call this? Burlap?
Looks like a burlap bag, a coffee
There's
bag.
a drink. Let's see here. What does that say? Can you read that?
It must be foreign. You wouldn't know. You wouldn't know.
You wouldn't know. It's okay. You got to, all right.
And he sent a letter with it?
Yeah. Says you would know is shrouded in mystery and mysticism. Some say that it was first brewed by a tribe of nomadic monks who traveled the world in search of a perfect recipe. Others claim that it was a secret concoction passed down through the ages by a line of secretive alchemists who guarded this recipe with their lives. You would know, I guess, is a beer unlike any other. Its name is a play on the phrase you wouldn't know. Oh, great. It's a nod to the fact that its true essence is beyond comprehension of mere mortals. It's brewed with a blend of rare and exotic ingredients sourced from the furthest corners of the globe. Its flavor is complex, bitter and sweet, notes of black currant, star anise, and the faintest hint of Australian finger lime. Each sip is like a journey into the secret realm where the laws of physics and logic are but mere suggestions. There's more, but I mean this is this.
It's very thoughtful.
But I mean, look! This is printed. Is there burned edges? This is.
I mean, to take a day off, he didn't have to go through all this trouble. I mean,
I'll taste it.
Give it. You wouldn't know.
You wouldn't know. It tastes exactly like Bud Light to me. I mean, this is outrageous. I'm just saying, this fancy thing that he's brought to us. That he think. I mean, are you going to believe that this is real? This is
maybe the true roots of Bud Light are not known yet.
That's true.
Maybe they are not exposing that the monks were the ones that brewed it in some distant.
I mean, but who? I mean, okay, Chace, whatever. I don't know.
Thank you for the thoughtfulness, Chace.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyway, so, all right, moving on. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about House Bill 147. And House Bill 147 is essentially, Kemp just passed to mandate that all schools have a active shooter, what do you call it, policy and active shooter.
And this is a Georgia bill.
Georgia bill. And that they must do drills, active shooter drills. What are your thoughts on that, Shawn?
I just have no idea the need for such a bill because I'm not familiar with any school that doesn't already participate in this type of thing.
Right.
I think a lot of times senators or congressmen like to pass bills to have their name on it when it's things that are already being done so that they can say that, we're mandating that this occur. But I'm not, at least, not in the Augusta area. I'm positive that every school, the Richmond County Board of Education, the Columbia County Board of Education, has already implemented, just like they do fire drills, tornado drills, that they have an active shooter type protocol, and that they do some type of practice on that.
What do you, I mean, so to me, it begs a question. Do you think that this is not only, well, now it's they're claiming that it's necessary. Do you believe that it's necessary? Do you believe that it is something that is going to help? Do you think it's something that's going to hurt? What are your thoughts?
I think from a legal standpoint, what we have to look at is what does it do towards the government and the school board? They were already doing this on their own. Now we have created a law that says that they have to do it. And
let me stop you real quick, just to kind of give the listeners a little bit that what the legal requirements are that they have to do this drill, but you also it requires the public schools to report completion of the drills to the Georgia Emergency Management and Homeland Security Office. And you also have to go through the stuff with the parents and tell them about it, and that students can opt out. It seems like there's a lot of tape and maybe unnecessary paperwork that is being just created by this.
Sure. And like I said, I worry about what does it create for the schools. I think it's pointed at making sure that everyone is doing the right thing, but does that create some type of duty upon the school now,
right,
that heightens the standard of if there is some type of an incident like this and the protocols and procedures are not followed,
right,
or if they don't have their paperwork in order about the last time they did such a practice drill type thing,
sure,
does that create liability for a student that is injured as a result of this?
I agree. I think I don't know the answer to that. And I don't think anybody does.
Sure.
But it certainly creates a new question. It reminds me of the phrase I learned a long time ago, and it took me a while to kind of understand it, but it's technology breeds technology. And so essentially what that means is that when you create something, it's going to have problems. And so those problems are going to create more technology to fix those problems.
Sure.
Same thing is working here. We have a law now that schools have immunity essentially from shootings, complete immunity, basically.
Just about.
I mean, there's some, but essentially, there's nothing that you can do civilly, criminally, unless there's just ungodly, outrageous activities. But generally speaking, this at least, at minimum, puts the schools a little bit, that has to move that a little bit, don't you think?
It gives them a minimum duty at least.
Before there was no duty.
Correct.
And now we have a duty. So there are absolutely going to be litigation in this.
Sure.
I mean, it might not be, and hopefully there's not, because this is something that we would never want to happen. But if you have a situation in Georgia now where you have an active shooter in a school, and it turns out that these requirements in this bill, which is passed, were not met, does the immunity outweigh this bill?
And that's what I don't know, but I guarantee you there's lawyers that are going to test that. And like you said, we hope that it never gets tested,
right,
because we don't want this type of incident to happen in Georgia, much less, anywhere in the United States or anywhere in the world. But inevitably, at some point, there will be some type of situation that probably calls this law into question,
right,
about what duty did it create for schools and boards of education.
Yeah. And
there's going to be lawyers out there testing that to try and find more liability coverage for these injured people.
Yep. And I mean, I think it opens up a ton of litigation. I mean, it always takes one thing and then it's, happens. But you also have situations where in Georgia you have to have a physical injury to make a claim for emotional damage, right? I think that this could potentially even get into that realm of what is classified as a physical injury, meaning that if you have an active shooter and you come in, and as you know from law school, when they're talking about injury, it can be
minute.
It could be a touch. I mean, but you have to be physically touched. So does the actions of a child that maybe was not injured but was pushed against the wall or trampled or
made to get under their desk,
and then now they're suffering mental anguish from an active shooter, does that come across? I mean, there's a lot of questions that I believe that this creates, and to me, that's what is so important about having lawyers in the House and in the Senate. And people always say, well, we don't need any lawyers there, but lawyers know how to write laws.
Correct.
And so this law to me is not great, not because of what it's trying to accomplish. It's about more so of what its detriment could be legally, not to the students, but legally.
And I'm glad you said that. Lawyers know how to write laws, and it's because of a background of knowledge on how previous laws have been interpreted, and judicial decisions that have made a difference and an impact in different people's lives and different places in the legal profession. It's just the timing is what just really kind of perplexes me about this law. When was Columbine? 1990 something? 30 years ago.
It was when
we're having a law regulating, drills for school shooting.
Right.
There's been, dozens of school shootings over the past 20 or 30 years.
And
that's why the schools are already doing this type of thing.
And to me, it reeks of a little bit, and I'm not against doing it, right? But it reeks of like hide under your desk in case of a nuclear war back in the 50s. So, but that's not the solution. I know we're trying to do something, but and I don't know what the solution is, but I don't think that drills are going to actually do anything. And I think that it may have the adverse effect. I can't help but to think of target fixation. Kind of reminds me of it. So, you have snow skiers or boaters or even airplanes that there's only one thing in the sky or one thing on the ground, and they wind up hitting that.
Sure.
And you go, well, how in the heck did they hit that? You just kind of, that's all you see.
And we see it a lot on the roadway too, where, a police officer has someone pulled over on the side of the road, and, for 20 miles, there's no one on the road, and a car runs into the back of this police officer that's got lights and everything going.
Yeah. And that's what I worry out with, especially with young children and you now. Does this create the environment of, when you have a tornado drill, you can't create a tornado, but when you have an active shooter drill, you can create an active shooter.
Sure.
So, I mean, that's what scares me about it. And like I said, the legal side of it, I think it opens up a unnecessary area of civil litigation.
It just, just like I said, the timing of it is just odd to me. It kind of be like if seatbelts were installed in every car by the manufacturers because they thought that they were safer and everybody was using them and everything.
Right.
And then 30 years later,
there's
the government
100% user rate.
The government came out and said, you know what?
Right.
It's the law that you need to put seatbelts in cars and that you need to use them when you're in a car. It's like, okay, well, everybody's already doing that, but
I agree.
Thank you for your law.
Right. I agree. And that's why I really don't love it. It's kind of a show me kind of thing, in my opinion. I'm for, if things are happening, then don't make the law, because laws do create problems. You know what I mean? If you have a law, there's a way that it can be twisted and turned and all that. So anyway, like I said, I just kind of wanted to quickly hit on that because that was very recent, and it's a Georgia bill that has passed. The other thing that we were going to talk about today is called the Restrict Act. And this is a federal act, and it's the Restricting and the Emergence of Security Threats That Risk Information and Communications Technology Act.
I thought that was just the TikTok ban.
Yeah, that's what it's known as, right? Yeah, well, there's a couple now, but that's what gets people's interest in it. But there's a ton of, what is it, 50, 60 pages. I mean, I've read it, you've read it, and it takes forever. We would be here until the end of time breaking down every aspect of it.
It's a little overreaching,
yeah,
to say the least.
Right. So we were going to kind of talk about the legal aspects in the power of it, and maybe some of the dangers that people may not understand because they don't understand how law is written and how words like shall and should can change everything.
Sure.
So what do you think about just your general thoughts on it?
Just I would first give the listeners and viewers just a little oversight on how this law, what it wants to regulate, and how it's going to shut down TikTok.
Right.
Because, I mean, isn't that what it's all about?
Well, I think that's what the outrage is about. But I think the government, it has other motives. And
You don't say.
you don't say. Call me a conspiracy theorist, Shawn.
This is the first time I've ever thought of
the government not having your best interest at heart.
Exactly. Exactly. That doesn't happen in the United States of America.
No, of course. Why wouldn't you trust the government to have total power and you not even be able to vote on somebody who's in that position of power, to be able to access every single thing that is online, including stuff in your house, actively?
I mean,
I would trust them.
Your webcams,
Ring cameras.
Like I mentioned earlier, in reading all of it, it's one of the most overreaching bills that I have seen of late.
Just to start you off, how about this? The title of this thing, it starts off and it says, to authorize the Secretary of Commerce to review and prohibit certain transactions between persons in the United States and foreign adversaries. That's extremely broad to start. And then, I love this part, comma, and for other purposes. That's it. That's the end of the sentence.
Well, I mean,
for other purposes? What the hell does that mean?
That means
everything.
It started out as this is what we're going to do, and everyone else put their hand in it and said, well, this needs to be a part of it. This needs to be a part of it. What about this? This needs to be a part of it. And then we come with, what I basically see as a garbage bill. That is, we have.
Explain why you think it's a garbage bill. It's not necessarily. I think that's what confuses people when lawyers say this is trash, this is garbage. You might not even. We're not talking about the substance of the goal. We're not talking about what you're trying to do. We're talking about the actual bill, the way it's written, and what happens is we're in this 7-second world. People read just the outline. They call it the TikTok bill. People who are against it. People who are for it are calling it the China bill. Keep them out. If that was the only thing, and if we could define it to that, I don't care. Take TikTok away, keep it. I don't really give a damn.
Sure.
But this is outrageous.
We think about it as, like you said, the TikTok ban, and if there is a government regulation that is meant to dispel or prohibit people or discourage people from commiserating with foreign adversaries,
right,
or to keep foreign adversaries, like China, from spying on us and things of that nature that they are alleging. Absolutely, I'm all for it.
You're for the result.
The result, exactly. This particular bill is so broad. The regulations that it wants to impose are so broad that we have to think about it as, the internet and communicating on the internet and posting videos on the internet. We have to think about that as a free speech issue. Free speech, last time I checked, was a fundamental constitutional right.
And I know, Shawn, just from knowing you personally, you like to post a lot of stuff online. A lot of things.
Oh, I'm heavy into social
poster.
media.
Heavy
Not so much. And when we think about a fundamental right that the government is trying to regulate, we have to think, what is the law and how do they regulate such fundamental rights? And we think about this as a First Amendment issue, that the government really can't infringe upon a whole lot. It's very, very, in order for them to regulate a fundamental right or infringe upon that, it has to be, they have to have a very, very compelling governmental interest to do so.
Yeah.
And then they have to have a law that is narrowly tailored.
Really narrow.
For that particular issue. And this goes as far as, outlawing virtual private networks.
Right.
Which many people use.
Yeah.
Many law-abiding citizens, companies.
No nefarious reasons.
Absolutely not. I would hope that every place that I go and use my credit card is using a virtual private network so that my information is encrypted and things like that.
Right.
And to outlaw that in a law like this, and they say, oh, well, that's not what we meant. We would never penalize anybody for doing that.
That was going to be my next go-to, man. You're right on what I'm thinking, too.
And then the whole basis of it, of the Secretary of Commerce being in charge of it, and a board that he appoints,
or she,
excuse me,
sexist pig.
For those of y'all who don't know, the Secretary of Commerce is not elected.
No,
not an elected official.
Right.
It's whoever the president at the time wishes to place.
I'll read you how exactly how it happens.
Let's do it.
Secretary of Commerce is appointed by the President of the United States and confirmed by the United States Senate. But after that, the President has full autonomy over the Secretary of State, meaning that
he does what he or she does what he or she says.
And he or she can fire he or she and replace the other he or she or they,
exactly,
at any time for any reason
if they're not doing what they want them to do.
There you go.
Well, and you just see the in this day and age, we see so much investigations that almost everybody looks at and says, oh, that is politically based.
Right.
They're looking into that because someone from the left is pushing it towards the right, or someone from the right is pushing this investigation on somebody on the left.
Right.
And that's, exactly what this bill gives the power to do.
Sure.
We think that this person, based on their internet activity, is commiserating with foreign adversaries.
Okay. Well,
so
right there, what you just said. What does commiserating with foreign adversaries mean?
I don't know.
Exactly.
Maybe you ordered a purse from China.
Right. That's what I don't think
Which I've done before. So I might maybe I'm on the no-fly list or on this list that it took about 19 weeks for it to get here. But I did do that.
I have seen it when we went to boot scoot. You were wearing it. Look good. I agree. It's such a broad thing. That's kind of what and the Layman is our podcast is called, doesn't really understand it. And you just don't understand it till you go through the training in law school to actually look at every word. And that's why people get mad at lawyers for taking so long to read something. But I can read fast. You can read fast, but you have to go through every line, and we talk about it every time. But this is one of those bills that I think it's 58 pages. And if you don't go through every word, this is the greatest change in governmental power that I have seen since the Patriot Act.
Attempted change.
Attempted change. Correct. Thank you.
Sure.
It'll change 100 times over, but the Patriot Act, nobody loves, but it was 9/11. Countries in panic.
Do it. Absolutely.
We got to figure something out. there's not a historically terrible event that has happened right now.
TikTok. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, listen, Senator.
Some people may say.
Senator. Which one is it that had our TikTok thing that we showed?
Senator Mack.
Senator Mack
Vote for
would
Senator
not
Mack.
be elected without TikTok.
I agree.
I mean,
Because it's a form of speech.
It's a form of speech. That is true. Is dancing a form of speech?
It's an expression.
It's an
absolutely.
expression. I've seen expressional dancing, But I'm going to take a sip, and we're going to get into the nit and gritty, as they say. So here, let's just list a couple of things from this that I'll list them out of what this could potentially mean legally. There's all kind of stuff. You can list things as foreign adversaries, and we're going to get into the power of it in just a second. But foreign adversaries is a term that they list number of countries, right? And then
So everybody knows who these foreign adversaries are.
But then it goes on to say that these foreign adversaries can be changed by the secretary at any time for any reason. So that's a problem. So here's what the other issue is, how broad it is. If you have these things, and then all of a sudden the foreign adversary is changed, now the government, without any kind of hesitation or retribution, can now access these things. Any mobile network, satellite payloads, cable access points, wireline access points, computer platforms, internet hosting services, cloud-based or distributed computing and data storage. I was just skipped to these. Desktop applications, mobile applications, gaming applications, payment applications, web-based applications. What the hell does that mean?
It means everything.
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 That means it. When you just put applications on it, I think, 10 years ago, when smartphones were just getting really going, the commercial was, we had an app for that. This thing can access every device that you have ever used, will use, and every piece of data that has been on the internet, is on the internet, or will be on the internet. Is that fair to say?
All without a warrant.
Just out of the blue. And to me, what is so scary about that is, you brought it up, is the person in charge of making that decision is not elected. That's insane to me.
Political appointment that serves at the will and of the president.
I mean, that was just a setup of. Let's talk about how the power of the Secretary of Commerce if this bill was passed.
It would be the number one position of power in the entire cabinet. Absolutely. The broad sweeping regulation and power that this would impose upon him and his board,
or her,
him or her,
misogynist pig.
I'm sorry. I've been doing my best to get my pronouns correctly lately. And I just always revert to him, unfortunately. And I am forever sorry for that.
Forever sorry.
But the broad sweeping ability for them to, you have a person has some type of contact, whatever that may be, with someone who they deem a foreign adversary, or later deem a foreign adversary. Or they're just investigating if this is a foreign adversary, and then they have access to everything in your digital life whatsoever, including everything that is on your wireless network at home, your Arlo or your Ring cameras.
And people think you delete a text message, it goes away. It's still on the.
Oh, it's still on the servers.
We get it. I mean, and
text messages, emails, telephone calls. It's all wireless now. We're not talking about the, landline type telecommunications.
You don't have the FDR phone where there actually is no dial. There was no dial on his phone. He just picked it up and it just went, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. There's none of that. This is not a direct line. It's all connected, and that means they can get everything. Everything.
When it boils down to it, it's, you got to think about it as if, they keep saying, oh, this is we need to ban TikTok. It's horrible. This China's spying on us. Well, let's investigate that.
Right.
And if that is the case, let's regulate that.
Right.
Or punish that. Not pass a sweeping broad bill that they claim is designed to combat that type of activity, but really gives them far more power, beyond, anything. And that's what,
it's beyond any law proposed that I've ever seen.
Sure.
His power and to have surveillance on the general population.
And going back to what the law is, when it's looked at, a law of this nature that regulates freedom of speech has to be narrowly tailored.
Right.
That is the term, narrowly tailored to controlling that compelling governmental interest.
Right.
And even if they went to a lower level of scrutiny, even if it went up and the Supreme Court said, well, things
have changed.
This is commercial speech, and there's not as much First Amendment protection to that, so we're going to do intermediate scrutiny. Well, then the government has to have an important interest, which we agree that is, but the regulation has to be tailored to that, interest.
Right.
You can't just cast a wide net and say this is all going to help this particular issue.
Right. And that's kind of the scary part of it. And I don't think it'll pass, but I certainly think it's problematic that it has gotten this far. And we've talked about it on other shows, but it just goes to the same issue that we talk about, where it's a divide, and it's politicized, where it's look at this over here. It's a magic trick. It's look at this. TikTok, 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 TikTok. And then you pass a bill and, all we're going to do is just mess with TikTok. This bill would essentially affect everything you do for the rest of your life. Everything.
And everybody.
And the government says, but we wouldn't do that. Do you believe the government? No. No way.
Firm believer. Firm believer. They say what they mean and they do what they say.
Well, just to list a couple of things that I thought were humorous about how broad they were. This is the power that is in the bill. Implementing authorities is Section 8 of the bill. Regulations. In carrying out the responsibilities under this act, the Secretary may establish such rules, regulations, and procedures as the Secretary considers appropriate. What does that mean, Shawn?
It means he can do whatever he damn well wants. That's exactly what that means.
With no recourse.
None.
Just
unless the president
autonomy.
Doesn't like it.
Right.
And then he fires him and puts another Secretary of Commerce in there.
Yeah. I thought that was one of the broadest statements I've ever seen under the power section of a bill.
Oh, sure.
That was incredible.
If he deems it appropriate.
What's appropriate? Is it? Do we have the porn definition back in the 60s? You know it when you see it, or whatever it was? Possibly, yeah. I was looking through the Ring camera, and I saw that they were looking at stuff. So that one's rough. Also, the Secretary may issue guidance, including opinions, and establish any kind of procedure to carry out this act.
He can do whatever the hell he wants. I mean, it's
to me and to non-lawyers, this is not laughable. To me, it's laughable how broad this thing is. I honestly, I've never seen a proposed bill that I thought had more avenues for corruption than this. Not that it would happen. I'm firm truster in the government. Not in this country. But this opens up avenues that I have never even thought would be infringed on in my lifetime. It's amazing to me.
And like you said, I don't see how it's gotten this far.
Right. That's the scary part to me.
From the start of it to, I'm more of a, I guess let's look at the problem and let's figure out what the possible solutions are.
Yeah.
And like I said,
Shawn, you're a good, normal human. You're not a politician.
That was the greatest compliment you've ever given me.
No, I take it back. But these laws, and this is my soapbox, but it continually proves that they're not making laws to help the people. We're making laws to allow the government to trick the people to taking away more of their ability to do things.
Well, and it also always, anytime you see something like this, reeks of, what is their political agenda with
Absolutely. 100%. And it's kind of like when you negotiate in mediations. Excuse me. This law won't be passed because it's almost like they started off like if they had
let's throw the kitchen sink at them.
Yeah.
And then we'll whittle it down.
We'll whittle it down. But even the whittling down is going to be overreaching, overbroad. Sure. But then you have two sides, whoever the sides are. It's definitely not the people, but whoever the sides are, will whittle it down to something that they can shove down the people's throat and maybe the people can stomach. And then that's our new law. And
then we'll see if TikTok continues to flourish.
But it's just a strange situation that it reminds me, there was a study done in, it was either Princeton or Yale, that if the general public had a below 30% approval rating of a subject, of a topic, that the bills passed on that topic were right at 30%. And if the general population in America, all of America, had 100% vote and confidence for, it was passed at a 30% rate. And that is my whole contention with the government, is that it's still not what the people are wanting. And this isn't what the people want. The people want to be protected from the bad guys.
Sure.
But sometimes the bad guys might be under our roof. How about that?
I agree. I agree.
So anyway, the other thing that I thought was interesting about the bill was the penalties. Now, these are civil penalties. The secretary can impose these, so he or she can just willy-nilly, gotcha. There's no trial. There's, and they always put not more than. So you can be fined as a citizen, $250,000. That's just a general citizen. And I'll bring something else.
That's right, front pocket change.
That's just pocket change. That's no problem. Now, that's just civilly.
Per infraction.
Per infraction. Sure. It is. It is. Criminally, it can't be more. That's the good news. It can't be more than $1 million. But you can also be in prison for 20 years. I don't see any corruption there. I don't know why that would be a problem. So those are the penalties. What do you mean? Thoughts, Shawn? Thoughts on the penalties of infractions of this kind of nature, where it It's a stretch, and I know I'm going to the extremes, but it could be simply an individual that is using a device that is now deemed a foreign adversary 3 or 4 years after they purchased the device or the app.
Sure. What I will tell you is that it's almost boilerplate. There are many federal laws, criminal laws, that's exactly the fine is not more than, $1 million or not more than $250,000. And you're like, this guy had a cell phone in a jail, but it was a federal, offense, or he used a cell phone to conduct a drug transaction and he can be fined up to $250,000 for it.
Right.
So that doesn't surprise me. And those things all come down to, essentially, federal sentencing guidelines where they'll say, well, for this particular activity, although the maximum is up to $250,000 or the maximum is up to $1 million, the fine range for this particular circumstance should be, $5,000 to $10,000.
Sure.
And then most often in, cases that I do, the judge says, well, that's the fine range.
Well,
but
most of them say just go home when you do it, right?
Fortunately, not in federal court. It usually doesn't happen that way. But they say, well, these fines, especially the $250,000 ones, they say, this person doesn't have the ability and very likely will never have the ability to pay this type of fine. So I'm going to sentence him to a fine outside of the guideline.
Let me ask you on that topic. I know state law, criminally, not nearly as well as you, but so what do you do in a situation where if a judge imposes a high sentence, if the person can't pay, what happens? You can't keep them on probation forever. How does that? What takes place?
Well,
in federal,
in federal, if you owe them money, they can
get
pretty much get your money.
The federal can just do whatever. It's kind of like this proposed bill. The secretary can do whatever the hell he or she wants.
Correct. There's avenues for them to recoup those type of monies should you ever, and that's why they have those guidelines, because they're not going to sentence a guy who has absolutely no assets to $1 million fine.
Sure.
But they can. I've read in paperwork that and I've heard judges tell them that they can come after their your tax returns.
Yeah.
They can refer it to the Department of Treasury, who sees everything that you do, at least everything on the books.
Well, we're about to be able to see everything you can do ever. So
might start referring it to the Secretary of Commerce. Say, Secretary of Commerce, does this guy actually have any money?
I think he's a threat. He's
he claims
threat.
He has no assets, but he does have a television that was made in China.
That's right. And it's got that brings
and it has an app on it.
It has an app, and that app it brings
connected to a wireless network.
Is what if you have malware, the remote Trojans that can enter your computer, your cell phone, all these things, and they purchase things, right?
Which all can be maybe not eliminated, but helped prevent from getting by using a virtual private network that this is banning.
Right. That was my point. And so these different entities, and they're all over the place. They're in every country that are trying to attack and steal money and get your credit cards and all that. If they make purchases or they buy something or communicating, it comes from your IP address.
Sure.
So how are these people ever going to be able to prove if you're in violation of this law?
It's whether or not they think that they, with this law, they don't have to prove it.
That's true.
The Secretary of Commerce,
just say you did it.
Makes a decision.
Yeah.
And what they would do is once you're on that particular list, then they're going to do substantial investigation.
Yeah.
I would hate to be on that list and have them go through everything. And that's when they come up with, this, you committed wire fraud in 2007 when you made this, return without a receipt to Amazon.
Right.
Like, oh, really?
You sent $50 for your fantasy football league.
Correct.
Yeah, something like that, and you put it as whatever it is, services versus payment or something. It creates just I think an entire world of we talked about to start the show, House Bill 147 for Georgia creating potential litigation. This thing, the restrict bill, if you think this thing doesn't create some litigation, holy mackerel. I mean, this is incredible.
It will create litigation quicker than any Senate Bill 147 for sure.
100%.
And there will be, First Amendment rights groups
there'll be criminal, there'll be civil. It'll be unbelievable. There'll be companies and individuals, criminally and civilly.
Sure.
I would appreciate the work. I like to have a good living and do the work, but I don't want this. This is an avalanche. This is unbelievable. So anyway, it's going around. Hopefully this cleared up some things. Probably didn't, but we weren't trying to talk about the ins and outs of the actual bill, more so with the potential problems of how the bill is written and the broadness and problematic issues of writing it this way.
And I would encourage anyone that has, any type of interest in that type of thing to actually go do the research themselves.
Yeah.
To go look at what the actual bill is, read some articles on it with some experts who are saying what they think the implications are. And obviously there's different news sources. You can look at news sources that are more left-leaning and they'll have, interpretations one way, and news sources that are more right-leaning and they'll have interpretations the other way, but make a decision for yourself. But I can tell you that
this is, me and you have no political leaning or no gain from any. This is our honest opinion of reading this bill.
Sure, absolutely.
So that's what we try to do, is look at it with different eyes. And we don't have lobbyists paying us money. We don't have anything.
Not yet, but
we keep plugging.
Layman's Law School is in its infancy.
Yeah.
Hey, well, what I like to say.
If it keeps plugging. That was, I enjoyed it, Shawn. It was fun to do, man.
Absolutely.
It was a lot more fun that Chace wasn't here. No, just kidding, buddy. And thank you for your ridiculous. If you expect me to believe that this is some kind of ancient artifact with your, this is out. This is just
you wouldn't know.
You wouldn't know. But it, shrouded in mystery and mysticism. I don't know. Chace.
Very thoughtful, but maybe a little misplaced.
But yeah. Thanks anyway, buddy. Well, until next time, Shawn, enjoyed it, my man. Thank you for being on with me as always. And next time, hopefully, we'll have Chace back to kind of right the ship and keep the inmates in the cell.
That's right.